Well, we are going on a road trip today. So I want you to pack your bags. I want you to put the suitcases in the trunk, grab some snacks, grab some water, put on your seatbelt, and let's go. We're going to go through 4 rest stops and check out maybe some ways that we can live a better life in following Jesus and what he wants us to do. Well, our first stop has a sign, and it says little things. Now, what in the world? Little things. Well, there was a very small little town in New England, and had a community center, just like we do in Willits. And it was like the main hub of the whole thing, like we have makes the breads thing, and we have just all kinds of stuff going on there. But this huge storm, as New England has, almost destroyed it to the point where the city council said, well, we're just going to have to tear it down and build it up again. So they decided what they were going to do was ask for volunteers and have people in the town who could help build it, and then they would pay for the rest. Well, the wealthy banker in town bought the supplies. The farmer brought the hay and the bale to make the roof, and the blacksmith brought the tools. And there was a little girl named Anne, and Annie just wanted to help so bad. And she said, what do I do? I'm 8 years old. But Grandma said, remember that nail that you found, that big old iron nail? Well, why don't you just put that on the table with the other supplies? Who knows? Maybe they need that. And the main contractor saw that nail, and he said, that is exactly what I need to attach the roof beam to the main beam of the house. It finished the building. And when it was all done, they had a big party, like our 4th of July stuff, big party, ribbon cutting, and everybody was there, and everybody was partying. And Annie stood back, and she said, I helped build that building. Little things can make a huge difference. The little things that we do for each other, a handshake, a hug, a card, a phone call, anything we do is a little thing, and you never know what difference that makes in somebody's life. It may make a huge difference. I know of a couple of times where it's made someone not commit suicide by saying, here, let me walk with you. Let me carry your books. Just say hello. I care. I love you. That's important. That little thing makes a huge difference. So don't ever think that your little thing isn't worth it. Well, we're getting in the car. We're going to go down a little further down the road, come to the next rest stop. We all know we like rest stops. And this rest stop has a sign that says love. And I absolutely do this. And I don't think anybody else does in here, but you might. I really think that what I have to contribute and the skills that I have aren't important enough. I'm not ever going to be the President of the United States. I'm never going to be the governor. I'm never going to be anybody. I'm never even going to be Teacher of the Year. So why should I do anything? And I think every one of us needs to sit down really and think about what fills our soul. What do we do that makes our life complete? Is it reading? Is it gardening? Is it volunteering? Is it helping at church? What is it that making cards like Val does? What do you do that makes you happy? Maybe it's making a wreath. Maybe it's playing games. Whatever it is. And think about how you can use that skill or that task or that joy to share with someone else. The church for a while had a knitting party, and a bunch of ladies got together and knitted. And there's just lots of things that you can do. But, every one of us, no matter how little we think our skills are, or how little our education is, or how much our education is, or what our job is, or our job isn't, or all these things we go through, the one thing every single person in this room, every single one of you and me, we have one thing, and that is unconditional love. Every one of you has the ability to love. Every one of you. And that's all it takes, because if we want to have people come to the Lord and enjoy the Lord, we have got to make sure that they know that we love them. You cannot preach people about Christ if they don't know you care. And you've got to care, and you've got to love, and you've got to make relationships. And we can do it because we have inside of us, God built us the ability to love, just as he loves us. And you know that old song, they will know we are Christians by our love. So every single day in our life, we have got to act and be Christians. We've got to say thank you to people who are helping us. Say thank you to the guy who's sweeping the floor. I say thank you to everybody I see, and some people, well, nobody's ever said thank you to me before. Think about that. Think about working your entire life, helping us, and nobody ever said thank you. Say thank you to the checker at Safeway. Just say thank you. Just go out of your way to be kind. Go out of your way when things are going really bad and you're stuck in traffic and you want to honk and you want to just love. Because we don't know what the other person's shoes they're walking in. We don't know. And sometimes I was at Costco one time and I bumped this lady's cart, and and I said, gosh, I'm sorry you're having such a bad day today. It's just be nice. I guess that's all I'm trying to say in this rest stop is just remember to just love, and then you can tell them about Christ because they want to know why you're so different than everyone else that they meet. Okay, back in the car. We're going down a long ways. We're going clear to Persia in our car. And we're going to meet Esther. Now, you know the story of Esther. There's no question about that. But did you know that she was just a country girl living in the outskirts of Persia, living with her uncle Mordecai, just doing what a farmer girl does, just being a girl. But she had to be very pretty. Now, she's said to be one of the most beautiful women in the Bible. But anyway, so back, over in the castle, there's trouble afoot. The king, Artaxerxes, is mad at Vashti because she refused to do what he wanted her to do. And so he said, well, I should kill her. And his men said, I don't think killing her is a good idea. Then he decided, I really do like having a queen, so I want a queen. So he said, you go out and you find all the good-looking girls, the young women, and you bring them in, and we'll train them to be queens. Then I will choose which one of them I want to be my queen. So they did that. And they went around Persia, and one of the young girls they found was Esther. And they brought them all to the palace, and they bathed them in milk and in mud, and they painted and they cut their hair, and they taught them how to speak and how to bow, and it was a pretty tough school. And most of the girls, if any of you know, and not the women, excuse me, I know you never did this as teenagers, but they were kind of snippy, and they would kind of gossip about each other, and they would try to get the first in line so they were noticed, so they might get picked as queen. And Esther didn't do that. Esther was kind. She was patient. She simply learned and listened and didn't push herself. Well, the time came for the Miss Persia contest, and the young women were lined up, and they were all in their finest queenly robes, and their hair was perfect, and they smelled pretty, and they just knew they were going to be the one. So as they marched by the king doing the thing, and Esther came by, and she didn't do any of that. She answered the questions. She was sweet, she was thoughtful, she was kind, and she was beautiful. And the king said, I want you to be my queen. Well, you think she was scared? Remember, she's a country girl. Okay, she's not grown up in the royal palace. She's a country girl. And so she got on her robes, and she got the crown on the head and moved into the palace. Well, there was a secret that she had never told anyone, and that was she was a Jew. Well, back at the palace, the prime minister, Haman, okay, he had a very big ego. And he knew that in order for him to be very important, everyone is going to bow down to him as he rode in his chariot around town. And, he was given the wave, and they were supposed to bow. Well, there was one man who didn't, Mordecai, Esther's uncle, because Mordecai was a Jew. And he had helped save the king earlier, so the king owed him, and so had given him a job. Well, he refused to bow because he was a Jew. And he believed the 10 Commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and he refused. Well, this made Haman really, really mad, because after all, I am Haman. And so he went to the king, and he said, "O king, your highness, I think it would be a good idea if we murdered all the Jews. Would you sign this proclamation, please? They've been really bad. They really need to go." And so the king signed the decree that all the Jews were to be killed. Well, when Mordecai heard this, he went to Esther and he said, "Esther, you have got to go stop this. You're the only one that can." But Esther said, "I can't, because if I go into the king and he doesn't want me and I'm not invited, I'll get killed." And Mordecai gave the thing we all know, which is, who knows if you aren't come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther said, "Oh, all right. What I want is I want every Jew in Persia for 3 days to fast and pray. And my servants and I will fast and pray. And then if I die, I die." She put on a robe. She put on her crown. She put on the perfume. She did the hair just the way he liked it. And she entered the throne room very slowly, head bowed, because if he put out his scepter, she would be killed immediately. But instead, he looked at her, he opened his arms, and he held her. She felt that she had to do what God asked her to do. And I believe that courage is not being afraid, but courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. And that's what I'm asking of you today. Everyone in this room is afraid of something. Everybody has fears. And sometimes it's a fear of, I'm not good enough. But what if we tried this? What if you got asked to do the children's story and you don't say, "Oh, I can't do that." You say, "I'll try. Will you help me?" Or what if you're asked to help potluck and bring something? "Oh, I can't cook. But what can I bring?" Having courage is not that you're not ever afraid. Having courage is you're afraid and you do it anyway. Just like you go to the dentist, right? Just like you go to the doctor. That's courage, but you do it anyway because you know it's the right thing. Okay, so you ready for the next? We're not going very far. We're just going down to a small town and a family whose mother's name was Maria. Now, Maria's husband walked out and left her with the kids. Said goodbye. No money, nothing, just walked out the door. And she was doing okay. She was a checker at the local grocery store, and she managed to keep food on the table and keep the kids healthy and doing all right. But the one thing that she dreaded more than anything else happened. This store closed suddenly, no word, nothing, just closed. She had no job, and her truck broke down. And she and the kids Every day, every week, the food got less. Pretty soon, the refrigerator was pretty empty. The cupboards were empty, and they were mostly eating oatmeal. But every single morning, they would get around the kitchen table, hold hands, and thank the Lord for what they had, and to have them have a good day. And at night, when the kids were asleep, she literally just cried because she didn't know what she was going to do except to pray and except to have faith that God would answer them. Well, one morning, there was a knock on the door. She opened the door, and there were bags and bags and bags and bags of groceries. There was fresh fruit and vegetables and milk and eggs and dry goods and even some gifts for the kids. No note, no explanation, just there they were. And then about a week later, there was another knock on the door. And the neighbor said, I understand your truck's not working. I'll take you to interviews. And then a little while later, she got a phone call, and it was this school district. And they said, you've been recommended to be hired to work in our after-school program. And she was going to make more money. She was going to have insurance and a reliable job, and she could be home with the kids. And when she told her children about that, her little girl said, isn't God good? And Marie said, God is always faithful. Sometimes he takes a while, but he is always faithful. And so what I want you to remember at this rest stop is when we're in the mountain, it's very easy to be happy and be faithful and love the Lord and just be joyful and happy. But when we're in that valley, when things are really bad in our life, when we don't know what we're going to eat, or we don't know how we're going to get our car fixed, or we've got something wrong with us that we're not sure we're ever going to get fixed, God is still faithful. God still loves us. And you need to remember that. That's what faithfulness is. It's not having when it's good, but it's also being faithful when it's bad. Because we all know who wins in the end, right? No matter what happens, we know who wins in the end. And that's what we always need to remember. Even if we are facing a loss of someone we love, we will see them again when Jesus comes. It's not the end. It's just a sleep. Well, the woman you're going to meet today lives by those 4 principles that I just talked about. Being courageous, being faithful, loving, and knowing that whatever you can do it. And so if you're ready to suspend belief and go back in time, we're going to meet this courageous, faithful servant of God. So excuse me for just a minute. Well, good morning. I understand that you've been talking about courage and trusting and being faithful. I've tried to do that, but wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Maude, and I was born in England to a Protestant family, very religious, and we were doing a good life. We had a good life. But my father dropped dead one day and left my mother and we children with no financial support. And I was the oldest, and so I knew I had to get a job. I went everywhere. Now, I got to tell you, I asked everywhere in town, and nobody was hiring. And then I realized the reason no one was hiring was England was in financial problems too, and there was just nobody. There was no money. And so most of us teenage girls thought that the better thing to do was to buy a ticket in steerage on a ship and go to America, where we knew we could get a job. So that's what we did. But I got to tell you, if you've never heard about steerage, let me tell you what it's like to cross the Atlantic in the bottom of a steamboat. The girls, well, whoever's in, are crowded together in the hold of this ship, just beds side by side. And think about how rough the Atlantic is. How many people were seasick, no sanitation, very poor water. Food was just dried peas and a mush. So most of us spent most of our time up on the deck because we just couldn't stand to be below. It was so bad. But when I saw the Statue of Liberty. I knew that things were going to be okay for me. I got off the ship, registered in Angel Island, and did all the things I was supposed to do and passed all the tests. And because I spoke English, I had an advantage. And I got a job. And one night after work, I was walking down the street and I saw a poster. Now, this poster was about that by that, and it said, Revelation, world's ending, come to the meetings. And I thought, well, remember, I'm a Christian, and I have a Bible. So well, that sounds kind of interesting. I'm going to go to that meeting. And I went to that meeting. And the speaker talked about things I had never heard before in my life, even though I'd gone to church every Sunday. He talked about the three angels' messages, and he talked about the horses, and he talked about the trumpets. And I wasn't sure he was knew what he was talking about. So when I got home, I got my Bible out, and I started to look. And sure enough, what he said was there. And then, so I went the next night, and I went the next night, and then I learned about the Sabbath, and then I learned about the Day of the Dead, and then I learned, and I learned, and I learned, and I went home, and I read, and I read, and I read the Bible, and everything agreed with what the Bible said. And I said, I want to be baptized. So I was baptized as Seventh-day Adventist as a teenager. And I took some night classes to learn more about Bible and to get a certificate to be a teacher. And I knew what I wanted to do with my life is I wanted to be a missionary. So I wrote to the mission board of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I said, I want to be a missionary. And the letter came back and said, I'm sorry, we're not interested. Women are too weak and too emotional and not strong enough, not strong enough to be a missionary. I said to myself, that's not going to happen. So I kept writing, and I kept writing, and I had my employer write a letter of recommendation. I kind of felt like that woman who went to the king in the Bible and kept yakking at him until he finally gave in. Well, they finally gave in. They sent me a letter, and they said, we've decided that you can be a missionary. And I became the first woman missionary in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The first woman. That's a lot of pressure to put on a teenage girl. But they sent me to Europe, and I was in France, in Italy, and Switzerland. And it was my job to translate pamphlets and to give Bible studies. And they would send me to churches that were struggling, and it was my job to give Bible studies and to help bring people to the Lord and become members of the church. When my time in Europe was over, I came home to the United States. And I wasn't doing too much, and I heard about a thing called camp meeting, and it was in Battle Creek, Michigan. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good time. So I bought a train ticket and went to Battle Creek. And that was what changed my life. One night, I sat down next to a slightly older, quite good-looking man. His name was Charles Boyd. And we began to talk. And we realized that we had both been missionaries. He in the western part of the United States and me in England, and France, and Italy, and Switzerland. And then we said, we both want to be missionaries. We want to go somewhere where no one has ever gone before. And we kept talking, and every night we sat by each other, and guess what? We got married. And we got married pretty fast, and people said, I don't know, it's a pretty fast marriage, and you're pretty young. I don't care. So we wrote to the General Conference, and we said, we'll go anywhere you want us to go. So they said, okay, we're going to send you to South Africa. So we packed up our trunks. We took the trunk, stuffed it with as many Bibles as we could get in it, got on a boat, and we went to South Africa. When I got out in Cape Town, I could feel the warm sun and breeze of the African air. And I looked out in Cape Town, and this place was full of people just waiting to be taught by me. I knew that this was what I was meant to be. But what I didn't realize, that along with the good things that were going to happen to me, there were going to be things that I never dreamed that I would have to deal with, and things that would happen to me that would make me trust in my Lord for strength. First thing, we had to get to our new place. So we said, what do we do? Well, there's no taxis, there's, no planes, no trains, no nothing. And so we hired an ox cart and an ox cart driver, and the ox, of course. And they loaded up our trunks in the back, and we climbed in, and he said, well, I can't take you all the way. I can only take you as far as I'm able to go. Then I'm going to just have to leave you off. And we said, well, that's okay. Better halfway than no way at all. So we started off. We went for 3 days down this rutted, dusty, dirt, blistering hot, no shade, with a stinky mule, ox. Bad. It was bad. No way to go to the bathroom. Very little water. We were afraid to drink it. Anyway, we got to where he had to stop. He took the trunks out. He took us out, turned around, and went back. And there we were on the side of this road. What do we do now? Well, what we did was we happened to see a group of men who were kind of standing around this weird hammock kind of a thing. And you rode in it. And so there would be 4 men, and we got in sort of this hammock thing, and we hired 4 other men to carry our trunks. And off we went. Now, if we thought the ox cart was bad, this was like this for another 3 days. But we finally got to where we were going to go, and it was Kimberley, South Africa. Now, you may have even heard of Kimberley, because Kimberley was where the first diamonds were discovered in South Africa. And when we got into that town, oh my, there was mines all over the place, and they were dynamiting the mines, and there were miners there, and there were fortune seekers there, and there were criminals there. And it was filthy, dirty, dusty, awful. They said, okay, God, this is where you wanted us. Here we are. First thing we had to do was find a house. The only place we could find was a tin shack with a thatched roof. So Charles, our daughter Edith, and myself moved in. It was unfurnished. Our cooking was a charcoal little stove in the middle of the floor. Many snakes loved to live there. They seemed to really like us. I was afraid to put our shoes on until we checked, because scorpions took naps in our shoes. And the food. Well, the food. We ate mush, canned vegetable stew, and if we could go out and find green weeds. Because fruits and vegetables, fresh things were so expensive, we could not afford it. We had no sanitation. The water was bad, so every morning I had to take my jugs, go out, get the bad water, bring it in, boil it on the charcoal stove, and then we could drink it. And rains came very suddenly and very hard. And one night, it rained so hard that the rain literally poured through the roof. And I had buckets and bowls and everything around to catch it. And by the end of the rain, we were all just sopping wet. But we were safe. And I said, we could get dry. Let's just get going. And so we started taking the Bibles and going house to house and giving away the free Bibles and just talking to people and asking how their lives were, and what their families are like, and what's good to do in Kimberley. And we had not been there but a few months when Edith got very sick. I brought some medications with me because I understood about the malaria, and I understood about the diarrhea and the typhoid fever and the cholera and all the things. and what you could get from the bad water if we aren't careful. But no matter what I did, I couldn't save her. And she died, and we buried her outside of town in a little grave. And Charles and I were just grief-stricken. But we said, we will not quit. God put us here. He has a plan for us, and we will stay here in Edith's honor. And I know that we will see her when Jesus comes, because an angel will come and put her in our arms. And so we just kept on. But several months later, Charles came down sick. And I couldn't help him either. And he died. And he was buried next to Edith in that little grave place outside of town. Here I was, a single white woman, widow in Kimberly. People distrusted me. They asked me, well, I don't even know why you came, and I certainly don't know why you just don't go home. And I felt I had to again show my love and that I cared for them. And I also thought, there's a lot of men who come in to work in the mines who live out of Kimberly, and I thought, well, I think maybe that should be what I'm going to do. So I packed up my Bibles, and I started out. Now, this road that I had to go down was worse than the road we came on, because this was not a main thoroughfare. It was rutted and dusty, and I had to be aware of the bandits, because the bandits were everywhere, and they really wanted anything they could have to sell. And I really wanted to protect my Bibles and myself. And I had to watch out for the wild animals. There were lions and tigers and cheetahs and snakes, a lot of snakes, dangerous snakes. And every day I would pray to God, please, God, keep me safe so I can do your work. And I would go up to a house, and they were very small, very tiny, and words would get around that the teacher was here. And people would come from all over and squish into this house. Now, South Africa is very hot, and the room would just be, and they have very little windows, and the room would just be sweltering hot. And everyone just wanted to hear about the Lord and how much he loved them. And a lot of them were sick. And I found myself nursing the sick and taking care of people and teaching them not only about God, but proper hygiene and about good nutrition. And sometimes I was so sick myself that I could hardly stand up. But God gave me the strength to teach those people. And so many people gave their hearts to the Lord. But I had to come home at night. And I had to go down that road. And no woman goes down that road at night. You just don't do it. And so that last house I was at, they said, look, you can't go home. Won't you stay the night with us? And we spent most of the night talking about Jesus and about the love of God and about keeping the Sabbath and about loving each other and God's grace. And they gave their hearts to the Lord that night. And I think that happened. That was a God thing. It really was a God thing. Well, one night when I was home, it was a clear night, no more blasting. It was late at night and everybody was asleep and I could hear the insects humming outside and my lantern was flickering and shadowing in the room. And I was writing a letter at my little table and I heard a sound. It was kind of a slither, kind of a slink. And I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was. So I took my lantern and very slowly I lowered it down, and there, face to face, was a puff adder. Now, a puff adder is the most dangerous snake in South Africa. If it strikes, you will be dead in 10 minutes. And it is looking me eye to eye. And puff adders don't coil and do things. They just watch. And if the person makes the slightest move that frightens them, they just go, shh, and you're dead. And there we were, eyeball to eyeball, and he's hissing. And I said, God, I need your wisdom. I'm frightened. What should I do? And I said, okay. So I very slowly and quietly, still staring at him, stood up. And I very slowly started to walk back, still staring at him, at the door, because I knew that I had a broom on the wall outside of the door. I reached around and I got hold of the broom, and I took the end and I began to gently nudge this puff out. And he hissed at me, and he coiled, and I just kept pushing, and he just slid away and went out. And that was a God thing. It had to be a God thing. It had to be a God thing. And I knew that I was doing what God wanted me to do, because he saved me from a puff adder. Well, I stayed in Kimberly for 3 more years. And I was so sick by this time and so weak that I knew I had to come home to get well. So I came back to the United States, and as soon as I got well enough, I began to do Bible studies again, and the Review and Herald Publishing Company hired me to translate the English books into French and Italian, because I had been there and I had learned the language. And I got another letter. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Charles and I were the first missionaries in South Africa. So I was the first woman missionary in South Africa too. That was so cool. Anyway, and so I got this letter, and it said, how would you like to go to Australia? I said, well, sure, I'll go to Australia. So I packed my bags and my trunks, and off I went. And I was a girls' dean, and I was a Bible teacher, and I ran support groups for baby missionaries who were going to go out, and I ran support groups for baby freshmen coming to Avondale College. And I stayed there until I retired. And I came back, and I went to live in a place you may have heard about, Loma Linda, California, and that's where I live. And I look back on my life, I realize that small things make a difference. By my giving out the Bibles, by being willing to help the sick, it made them more receptive to listen about God. I learned that I could be afraid and still have courage. That courage does not mean not being afraid. Courage means do it anyway. And I learned that love has got to, you've got to have love, and for everybody, no matter gender, education, color, anything, you've got to love them. And I learned so much about being faithful when times are tough. When I had to deal with the death of my son, and my daughter, and my husband, I had to have faith that God was with me. There is a river that separates the provinces of Rome, of Italy, to Rome, Italy itself. And there was a law that no general and his armies could cross that river into Italy itself, and he would be killed instantly in a horrible torture. But there was one man, his name was Julius Caesar, and he said, I'm going to try. So he got his army together, and he crossed the river, and he marched into Italy, into Rome, and the government got so frightened they ran, and he took over Italy. Isn't that amazing? Does anybody remember the name of that river? Do you know the name of that river? Oh, no. It's just very famous that we still use. Do you know, Don? Nope. Oh, he wasn't listening to me. Yes. Close, 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 close. Oh, you're good. You're good. Anyway, all right. So this river means, its name means, I'll give you a clue. This river means you can go no place but forward. Oh, still nobody.
The Nile?
No, not the Nile. It's in Italy. Huh? You say, try it. Rubicon. Yes, good job. Good job. Okay, the Rubicon is a river that once you start, you can't go back. Well, the Israelites faced their Rubicon when they were at the Jordan River because there was no boat, no bridge, and it was the river time of year, and the river was just flowing and overflowing. And they were whining, as the Israelites were sometimes to do, and I guess they had forgotten about the Red Sea incident. So Joshua stood up and he said, "You listen to me. You have no idea what wonderful things God is going to do for you tomorrow." And you know what? The cool thing was God didn't just go, "Whoo," and the river opened. He made them put their feet in the water first, and then he opened up the Jordan River. And that's a lesson for us. We have got to put our, you know how when the water's cold and you kind of put your toe in? When we're asked to do something and we're on God's mission, all we have to do is put our toe in. That's all we have to do. We don't have to jump in the deep end. Just put your toe in, like Val, who brings those cards all the time. That's just a toe. But look how much we appreciate the cards and how much those cards go out to other people. That's a little thing, right? But it's a big thing. It's putting our feet in the water. And then the Israelites crossed over the Jordan, dry, and owned Canaan. Well, I think we as Christians have a Rubicon. And that Rubicon is our life. And we have got to put our feet in, and God will keep us safe until we get to heaven and we see all the marvelous things that are there. And God says to us, "Welcome home, my good and faithful servant."